screen, share the live. We're going to get started real soon here. All right. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Pippa, Rashane, Jocelyn, Chad, welcome. All right. So, welcome everybody. My name is Tina. The topic that we're going to talk about tonight is the practical application of emotional connections. And so, if this is your first time joining me, I am a happiness coach. I help people deal with depression, anxiety, challenging emotions, if they're feeling down, and moving them into a happier place. I share my personal experiences and I share how I've done this, how I've been able to move myself into a happier place. And these are things that I use in my day to day life, even today, and as well as when I did my original therapy work many, many years ago. So, my goal is to be able to help people by sharing my experience, and hopefully, you can take something that you can actually apply to your situation away. And sometimes I will talk about my personal experience, and sometimes I will also talk about business experiences. So, yesterday was very much around business and those kind of applications. Today, it can still apply to business, but this is a little bit more around the personal side of dealing with the emotional work. So when I first started recovery and healing work and starting to go to therapy for the sexual abuse that I had experienced as a child, first of all, I didn't think I needed any help. No, I was good. I had a good head on my shoulders. I was, good in school. I had a part-time job at the time. And actually, no, I was working full-time because I was like 19. So I was working full-time, did really well, and all these things. And I thought, I'm fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have emotional breakdowns. I don't have anxiety. I don't have any trouble with drugs or alcohol or anything. Why do I need to go to therapy? I am fine. And I went to shut my mom up. And I went to that first therapy session and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go in. I'm going to tell her all the things that had happened to me. And then by the time I'm done, then they'll see that I don't need to come back. And that was my goal. And I went about 30 minutes in, told everything that had happened, read it off like it was like a grocery list, no big deal, no emotion, nothing, wasn't crying. So I was like, see, I'm fine. And so I got to the end of the story, and then I just sat there, and she was waiting for me to say something else. And all I could think of was, oh man, I'm such a loser. I just told my entire life story in like less than 30 minutes, and I've got nothing left to say. And because of that negative voice in my head, then I started crying and I was like, shit, now I got to come back. Now I got to do this therapy thing again so that they can see that I'm fine and I don't actually need therapy. So that's how I started my therapy journey. So I was extremely resistant to it. And I'm sure some people would think maybe not much has changed. So, because of the things that I've been through, I have a lot of lack of trust. Um, Sometimes it's for myself, sometimes it's for others. Hey Gary, welcome. So as I was going through these things and as I'm starting to learn some of the things from when I was in therapy, one of the things that I had learned early on was the concept of disassociation, where oftentimes I felt like I was like this balloon, like I was kind of following my body around. So I was never really connected with my body, and therefore not connected with my emotions. So one of the things I had to start to learn to integrate was being in touch with my body, being in touch with my emotions, because if not, and I still tend to lean more towards this, is I need time to think about how I feel, because with the environment that I grew up in, it was such an automatic reaction to turn off those emotions. Now, this actually has served me very well in business, in entrepreneurship, all of those kind of things, in dealing with other people's stuff. I don't react very well. And then, of course, I ended up going to a 12-step group where I also learned the concept of not reacting to other people's outbursts and angry behavior and stuff like that. So, and add in customer service from business years, and you learn to be able to deal with a lot of shit and not take it personally. So you develop this whole thick skin. And I was pre-primed for that kind of career path based on the childhood that I grew up in. But part of the recovery process, because if you go through life where you're disconnected from your emotions, the problem is you assume other people are disconnected from the emotions. You don't feel it, they don't, and you think that they don't feel it. And then you wonder why when people feel like you kind of walk all over them. And I thought it was just an Aries thing, but it's some of it is trauma, right? And making those connections and understanding where that stems from, right? Um, so the whole process of being able, people need to understand to spit their own emotions, and then there's no issue. Um, to deal with their own emotions, sorry, Ian, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying there. People need to just spit their own emotions, then there's no issue. So is that like to deal with their own emotions? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So when we, and the problem is if you've grown up in an environment where there was trauma, so if you look up ACEs test, just do a Google search for it and do an ACEs test. ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. So a couple of years ago when I started a coaching program, because people seem to naturally open up to me. And I thought, okay, I can help people by sharing some of my experience and what I've been through and all this kind of stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, that it didn't just work for me. So I did some research and understood a little bit more. And as I did research, I understood, I'm like, oh, damn, there's this whole other level of stuff, because I only dealt with the tip of the iceberg kind of thing, with the healing and recovery, because it focused so much around the act of sexual abuse. It didn't deal with any of the acts of neglect or the emotional components and the emotional dynamics and attachments and all of that kind of stuff. It didn't deal with any of those kind of things. Um, so the first 10 years of my healing, happy birthday, John Ross. Happy birthday, 35. So the first 10 years was mostly dealing with that uh, reintegration of understanding the emotions that I had, and also being in touch with my body, and so that I could actually feel those emotions. So I actually had to, in my 20s, start learning, because it was such an automatic response to turn off those emotions, that I would deny those feelings because they were too overwhelming. So, excuse me. At the time, I remember watching this movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It had Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage in it, City of Angels. And there was one part, so it was kind of like the whole premise of this angel was watching over her, but he kind of fell in love with her, and he also wanted to become mortal so that he could be with her. And there was this scene where he was, I can't remember if she was describing how what a pear tasted like and what it was, and so she described like the juiciness of the pear, the granular texture of the pear, like it was a bit gritty, the sweetness and all of those kind of things, and that kind of um, made me kind of pay attention to the different senses. Now, I use the five senses if I'm feeling anxiety, and I do that as a grounding technique, which is name five things that I can see, five things that I can hear, five things that I can touch, five things that I can smell and taste. So I go through those five senses as a way to ground myself and bring myself back to the present moment. So, in order to be fully aware of your emotions and be fully in touch with those, you have to be grounded in the present moment. And oftentimes, when we're in that disassociated state, we are either in the past or we are anxious because of the future. So, depression from the past or anxiety from the future. And neither one of those is grounded in the present moment. So, in order to be fully in touch with your body, fully in touch with your emotions, then you need to be grounded in this present moment. And so, when I remember watching that movie, that was something that was really powerful to me, that I started to incorporate that concept into different aspects of my life. So I would slow down. Number one is slowing down to savor and taste food and pay attention to the texture, pay attention to the smell, pay attention to the visual uh, presentation of the food. Paying attention to how I felt, like what did it feel like in my mouth? What did it feel like when I swallowed it? What did it feel like in my stomach? And being really aware of those sensations in my body. Also starting to pay attention to when I felt anger, where did I feel that anger? I would notice, like, my shoulders would get tense, my breathing would get more shallow. I would get these tension headaches a lot of times too. So I did this thing for a while. I was at a job. There was a high amount of stress. I was pissed off all the time and wasn't allowed to voice it. Well, that starts to manifest in your body physically. And I was doing this teeth grinding thing at night, and I'd wake up and my jaw would be aching because I was so angry through the night. And it was such repressed anger that I was just like grinding my teeth. And so becoming aware of these different sensations and different things that are going on in your body is really important, um, to being in touch with your emotions. Because when you start to go through that process of being in touch with those emotions, what ends up happening is you can start picking up early warning signs of different things that are happening so that you're less reactive to certain situations, that you're able to give yourself what it is that you need. Um, so I had talked about this a couple of episodes ago too, that I used to like push, 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 and I would just ignore any sensations that were going on in my body. And then I was kind of caught off guard when I got like so badly sick that I would be out of commission for at least a week. And I mean, like high fever, bedridden, sleeping 18 hours in a day, like out of commission kind of thing. Um, because I would push myself so hard and I wasn't paying attention to what my body needed. I can still get that way when I'm in a stressed situation, that I tend not to pay attention. And I did this even when I was doing like cake decorating, when I had my cake decorating business. I would push and push and push. I'd go like 36 hours just making a cake, because it's like I'd, I'd underplan the amount of time that was needed, and then different things would go wrong with putting the cake together, and sometimes I'd have to like start over from scratch, or things would get knocked over or like fall, and I'd have to redo the cake. And so, of course, that added additional time. And so, whatever time that I had budgeted ended up falling through. Or if, like, some of the decorations didn't quite work out, I'd have to like redo those. And so, I I think it was like 36 or 40 hours that was my longest time of going nonstop with no sleep, and being fully aware of what's going on in my body, and then the aftermath afterwards, like when I'd get some sleep, and then feeling all these. It's almost like you could feel the lactic acid build up in your muscle, and it was uh, like when it'd release, like I'd have to flush out with a lot of extra water. I'd have to do stretches. I'd have to do all kinds of different things to try and compensate for what I had put my body through, right? And so it would often take me a couple of days to recover from that. So that wasn't exactly a good business model structure. But this is all part and parcel of being in touch with those emotions, being in touch with your body. Okay. So going back to like early recovery stuff of how I would so I'd have to intentionally do this because I was so disconnected from my body. I was mostly in my head, mostly logical, mostly completely disconnected from my emotions. Um, and oftentimes felt numb. So what I would do is I would focus, like, so if it was food, I would focus on what it was I was eating. I would focus on the chewing sensations. I would focus on the sound, the texture, the taste, the juiciness, the dryness, the toughness, the crunchiness, whatever it was. I also paid attention to different foods that I would crave based on different emotions that I was going through. So if I was angry, oftentimes I would tend to crave things that were crunchier, that were saltier. This is why when it's like they say when you're mad, it's like ooh so salty, right? You'll notice correlation that you tend if you're finding that you're craving a lot more crunchy, salty, greasy kind of foods, you've probably got some emotional anger that needs to be dealt with, expressed. And if you're craving sugary things, creamy things, like milk based, it could be cheese, it could be ice cream, it could be um, yogurts, those kind of things. One, it could be maybe you need some calcium. It also could be more of a sadness and loneliness thing that I was able to correlate between the craving for ice cream and dairy and stuff like that was more of needing that emotional connection with other people. So one of the things that I would start to do is before I'd go for the ice cream, I would reach out and connect with a friend. And oftentimes by the time I finished connecting with a friend, I was okay, and that craving for the ice cream or the food was no longer as intense. Now, sometimes we would just go out and have ice cream. So I know this one time, a friend of mine, we went in downtown Toronto, we went to this fancy ice cream shop that had like this handmade Dutch ice cream, and it was like really good. But she had ordered this banana split, and this thing was like bigger than her head. It was like huge, and she went through that, and she looked down as we were talking and we were kind of eating and stuff like that. She looked down. She goes, "Damn, I guess I was more depressed than I thought." And it was like those are kind of things that you pay attention because I don't know, you build emotional connections around different foods that you eat, different experiences because eating and socialization is something that's very connected, right? And we oftentimes have very good memories associated with the food experiences. So, example, summertime, and you go out with the family. I know when I was young, we would go up to my aunt's cottage, and it was a really fun time. It was a really peaceful time up there, and we got to play. We got to be kids up there. And they owned the local Dairy Queen in that town. And so every night when it was time to close up the store, we would drive in from the cottage into the town and then close up, and then we would get the discards, like so if the ice cream cone was kind of made wrong or they put the wrong syrup on it or something like that, got put in this discard freezer bin. There's nothing wrong with it. It was just wasn't what the customer had ordered, or it wasn't displayed properly. And so we got our choice of those kind of things. So we had a lot of good memories around having ice cream and that fun thing that we would do every night to wrap up the cottage, right? Or the Dairy Queen in the town. Um, so you associate certain memories and think of different celebrations of different holidays that you have or birthdays. It's like, what is your favorite foods that you like to eat? What are the things that you, activities that you like to do as well? So being able to correlate whatever um, emotions that you have around certain foods is one great connection. Another one is I would go for massage therapy. Um, that was one of the ways of being able to be in touch with my body. I was blessed of being in a corporate environment at that time, and that there was, I think it was pretty high. So I had like, I think it was a $500 a year allowance for massage therapy, and that's back when massages, like a high end one, was about 75. So I would get different massages, and I would go, and then you also had a bonus spending account that you could spend on anything that you needed. So I used those for massage as well. So I basically had it set up that I could go for a massage and not have to pay anything for myself for about every 6 weeks. And I would, that was something that was really, really good for me. And I went to somebody that she practiced things like cranial sacral therapy. She did Reiki. She did like energy stuff as well. And so she was really, really good. And she worked out of her home. She had like this nice little room set up with plants and like fountains. And it was just very nice. And I drove like 45 minutes to go for that massage, which was actually a good thing because, like I said, I was so disconnected from my emotions that being in touch with my body, I then had to start to think about how it was that I would feel. So I would go for these massages, and then I'd have like a 45-minute drive home, which was actually good because I was able to process different emotions that came up in my body as I was going through the drive home. And sometimes they brought up like emotional tears. Sometimes it was sadness. Sometimes it was happiness. There were sometimes it was just the feeling of being well, just feeling nurtured, right? And that sometimes getting your needs met, when you first start this process, when you get your needs met, it will bring up the pain of the times that you didn't get your needs met, where maybe you weren't touched in a healthy, appropriate way, in a loving way, in a supportive way, right? So there's different things that you can go through when you're dealing with these emotions, but the more that you bring that experience in a safe way, in a controlled way into your environment, the the more in touch you are with your body, the more in touch you are with your emotions. Okay, and this also will allow you to pick up early warning signs if you are feeling certain illnesses as well. And that you can take the appropriate action to be able to get your mind right so that you take care of your body, and focusing on those kind of things. So, um, at the time, I had also read this book by Doreen Virtue, where she talked about a near death experience where she had died and she remembered being out of her body looking down, like as a spirit looking down on her body. And she had talked about how at the time she found that all the criticisms that she had. Hi, Frida. Welcome. Glad that you're new here. That is my cat, Felix. I'm surprised he gave me so much time before he started yelling. He's a little show stealer. So, welcome, Frida. So, as you're going through these different things, I remember her talking about how she had so much more appreciation of her body when she was looking down on it, because she saw it more as a vessel for her soul rather than the constant barrage of how media sometimes projects that we are supposed to look and feel a certain way, and of what's acceptable beauty or handsomeness, male or female, right? And I think guys are getting it even more now. Women have finally had enough of the shit, and now it's transferred over to the way men look instead of the way women look. So, but I think that whole concept, when I had read that, it gave me a lot more appreciation and gratitude for the body that I inhabit. And I started to view my body much more appreciation for, especially since I didn't take very good care of it, right? So I have been up and down the scale. Highest was almost 400 pounds, currently around 225, right? So have been working my way back down over the last couple of years. And despite, so I'm going through a little bit of a plateau phase and need to break that. So to work my way down, but it's more the emotional work than the that needs to get done than the physical eat this, do this kind of thing, right? Yes, those things work, but if I want the long term, I need to do the emotional stuff so I can release those blocks to of why the excess weight's there in the first place, right? Because it's there as a protection mechanism, it's there as a trauma response, it's there as armor. And so understanding it's like, well, what's going on with that? So I'm going to have to dive a little bit deeper into that for myself. So note to self. Okay. So as I was going through that, like I started with basic things that I would start giving myself much more appreciation for my body, much more gratitude for my body. So I would appreciate my hands for being strong. I would appreciate my skin for being clear. I would appreciate my legs for being so strong to carry all this excess weight. And, so it's having this whole appreciation and gratitude and connectedness with the body was how I started to get in touch with my emotions, how I started to pay attention to different sensations. So, like when I'm in the shower, what does that water feel like on my body? Like, and I love, one of my all time favorite things is, and I've had this from a kid. I spent way too long. Like I'd stay in that shower until there was no hot water left. I'd come out with like the little raisin fingers. And I just really love a really hot shower. Like I'd come out and my skin would be like pink, like bright red pink. And so my ex-husband, he would joke with me. He said, he's like, "Oh, you've parboiled yourself," right? So, but I just find the sensation of it extremely relaxing. I feel all of the muscles in my body relax. They stretch out. I feel calmer. I feel more open. I feel at ease. Um, and it's just a very relaxing, sensual experience, right? Yeah, and migraines. Oh my gosh, the migraines I used to get, 24/7 pain migraines. Mental health is affected due to physical ailment. Yeah, I don't know what kind of things that you've tried. I know for me, some of the things that have worked. Oh, hey Sam, I see you on Facebook there. Some of the things that have worked for me is increasing my water intake, um, breathing. techniques as well. So I would start to pay attention to where the tension is in my body. I do like massage around here, around the neck, just kind of like down by the earlobes. Um, Going for the massage therapy helped a lot too. And also paying attention to the mental health of what is the word track going on in my head, because oftentimes that would also increase my stress levels, which ended up increasing my blood pressure, which ended up causing the first batches of migraine headaches that I would get. Um, Hot coffee, hot black coffee would often help as well. But these are like much more natural. I know there's other people that take medications for stuff. I haven't had to do that. I would also do some stretching because I'd have some weird things that ended up happening that I would often get like lower back pain issues, and that was often because the front of my thighs were very, very tight. And then it would start to pull on my back. It would also pull on my shoulders and stuff like I'd pay attention to how I was typing, how I was breathing while I was at work. So sometimes this is why it's so important to be grounded in your body because I would find that I would do shallow breathing, and that's a fight or flight uh, symptom, right? So you're basically stressed, you're tense, and it's like that pulls on your head, your scalp. I would do scalp massages too; those are awesome. I'd get extra time on the scalp massage, so I would do those kind of things, and they seem to help. But I think more of it was getting myself into a much more peaceful state, help those migraine headaches. Getting your eyes checked also helps because sometimes it can be that too. Now, if it's due to a physical injury, physiotherapy and stuff like that is recommended, right? Um, but my first go-to is always increasing my water intake. So I had that the other day that I woke up pretty bad headache, tension, pressure behind the eyes. And if I don't take care of those things, if I don't pay attention to the early warning signs, it does turn into those crippling migraines where like I need to be in a dark room. I can't handle any sound. I can't, like I'm nauseous. I've thrown up from it. Like it's been that bad before. But I think because now I understand what those early warning signs are, I start to mitigate the challenges before it gets to that point, right? So you've been there for 50 years. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to hear that. It's pretty challenging. What kinds of things have you tried, Frida? Does anything help you more than others? So being in touch with your body as I'm waiting for you to type, I'll continue chatting here. Being in touch with your body, I would start to bring in much more uh, pleasurable, sensual experiences into my day-to-day life, right? So that could be anything from slowing down and truly enjoying, like when you go to have a cup of coffee, right? Enjoying the smell of it, enjoying the taste of it, enjoying the heat of it, feeling it on your hands, like really bringing it into a full senses experience. And that's what I mean by a much more sensual experience, right? Just even sitting outside in the sunshine, feeling um, the the warmth of the sun on your skin, on your face, feeling the breeze, listening to the different sounds that are around. Do you hear birds chirping? Do you hear a dog barking? Do you hear the leaves rustling in the trees? All of those kind of things. Just really fully slowing down, being fully present, bringing as many of your five senses into the process as possible and being fully grounded in that moment. So, doing that in multiple ways throughout your day. So, like I said, I did that with my shower. I would do that when I'd put lotion, hand cream, body cream on. Um, oh, temporal lobe dysfunction and epilepsy too. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not a medical doctor, nor do I play one on TV, so I'm not sure if any of the tips that I've provided would help. I don't think that they would be harmful, since they're all more natural type remedies. Um, but is there anything that you do find that works for you, or do you find that there are certain things that increase the frequency of it? I know I had a friend of mine, she had had this experience where she was given two different medications that ended up causing her to have an epileptic seizure. She wasn't allowed to drive for a year and all that kind of stuff, and she had to learn all of this different things. She found certain food additives, certain dyes would set off different experiences for her and would re-trigger. Uh, Head massages at the hairdresser are wonderful, I know, right? Yeah, those things, those getting those scalp massages, oh man, they are the best. And working on my neck, oh, I love those. Yeah, my neck, my shoulders, because I did a lot of office work, so I was doing this a lot. And I would crunch up and I'd have like this tension and the shallow breathing and because I had gone for so many massages too, and I actually ended up starting a massage therapy business that I did part time, um, and uh, and so I would do massages for my friends, and I would do massages. One of my girlfriends at work, she was like, my neck, her shoulder would get all knotted up, and I'd come over and I'd like massage her, like in the office, I'd massage her neck and her shoulders and stuff like that, and then I'd often have to tell her, I'm like, could you take a deep breath, please? Like honestly, you're not even breathing, like you're like such shallow breathing. So really focusing on taking those deep breaths, bringing that oxygen into your body, into your mind, into your cells, and visualize it going into your cells, right? Really taking that time to seeing your cells expand, relax, and visualizing those kind of things. Hey, Gov. So doing those kind of things really, really helps. Okay. Also, like I said, taking better care of my skin, taking better care of my hair, taking better care of my teeth, all of those kinds of things. Like, so little things that I did that I didn't do before. It's like, it was around the time when I was in therapy and I was doing all this emotional body type work. That's when I started flossing my teeth. I never did that before, right? And I bought an electric toothbrush instead of a regular toothbrush. And just these little acts of self-care, of just taking better care of my body. I started to do things like making sure every day I ate something that was fresh and unprocessed. And then I tried to increase that how many more times. So this wasn't about, oh, I had to eat these particular things or this particular thing. No, it was more of when I did eat, trying to bring it more fresh, unprocessed, and then when I did eat it, fully being present with it, fully savoring it, tasting it on your tongue, like almost turning it into a 9.5 weeks experience. Okay, if you haven't watched that movie, it's another 80s movie where they have the whole fridge food thing that happened. So really enjoying the pleasure, the sensations out of life, of everything that you do in life. And then, of course, paying attention to all of the aspects of your body and what's going on with it. I was also, I won't give up little things like flossing because my health goes downhill at night. Yeah, no, definitely doing things like meditation too, like you had mentioned there. And yeah, I do all that kind of stuff every night. And it was very difficult to develop that habit at first. But one of the guys I worked with, he was like, "Yeah, I floss all the time." He's like, "I got it by the TV, just sitting downstairs, so it wasn't always like in the bathroom. It was like, oh, I just finished eating my meal and I've got something stuck in my teeth. Instead of grabbing a toothpick, he would floss his teeth, right?" And I'd be like, "Oh, okay." So making things that you need convenient to you as well, so it's easier for you to start to implement those habits. So it was good that you joined. Thank you so much for commenting, Frida. I appreciate that. Um, Habit for you at bedtime or TV time. Yeah, exactly, right? So when you're developing new habits, to partner those with things that you are already doing and making it easily accessible. And you can do the reverse for if you're trying to avoid certain things. So making something not so easily accessible. So say you've got uh, you want to cut down on chips or cookies or chocolate or something like that that you might get into, making it so that it's not easily accessible, like maybe putting it on the very top shelf that you have to go grab a ladder for, or obviously some people it's some people it's better for them not to have it in the house. For me, I found as long as it was in the house, then I was okay. I always wanted what was outside of the house, so but I was too lazy to go get it. So that was a win-win for me. It was in the house, I didn't want it, but if it was out of the house, then I wouldn't also go get it. So those are kind of things. But my and this happened all the time at work too, is like I would go to the vending machine, I'd get like a chocolate bar and I'd eat like half of it and then I'd wrap the other half up and I'd put it back in my desk. And the thing is I'd forget about it, and then the other girls, they would get into my desk because they couldn't handle that there was a chocolate bar half eaten in there, and it was just calling their name, and then they'd get into it and they'd always laugh at me because I didn't even notice it was gone. They're like, "How do you do that? How do you only eat half of the chocolate bar and put it back?" And I'm like, "Well, I wanted some for later. I just wanted the taste, a little something, right?" Um, and and I'm like, "I don't understand how you can eat it to the point that you like want to be sick from it. I didn't understand that, right?" So just different styles, whatever works for you. If you're the one that can't have it in the house, then don't have it in the house. Or if you do have it in the house, um, put it so it's not so easily accessible. So whatever you need to do. Or one of my other favorite techniques is to have something that is better for you first. And when you have that, so like, you know what, if you do want to get into the chips, it's like, okay, well, have some veggies, crunchy veggies first before, and then you can have your chips kind of thing, right? So it's kind of like puts a bit of a time delay, also reduces the amount that you're going to eat. And sometimes too, I would also, is like, do I really want the chips, or am I just really craving additional salt? So I would maybe have something like dill pickles, because they gave me that salt craving, and then that reduced the what I actually wanted from the chips, right? So those are different things that I would try, these different techniques, being able to do that. And that was because I started to be much more aware of what was going on with my body, also much more aware of what's going on with the foods that I was craving and what kind of emotions were going on with those foods and how they correlated. And that's something that you can get over time of paying attention to when you get into certain things that you're doing. Uh, and that could be anything. Like I'm talking particularly about food because that tends to be where my addiction, that's my drug of choice. Other people, it might be the alcohol, right? And I've seen plenty of alcoholics, when they quit drinking, what ends up happening is they switch over to, they crave things like ice cream, because alcohol has a high amount of sugar, right? And it also has that social aspect as well of when you're out, you're drinking, you're craving that social connection. But if you quit that drinking and now you can't go hang out with your friends that are always drinking, then what often happens is alcoholics will end up going and um, they'll pick up like a food addiction, like ice cream, or they'll start having these different cravings. And what I know about ice cream is it's that sadness, loneliness connection, it's that social aspect. And so there's that emotional correlation to you can't take something away without replacing it. So starting to learn what it is that you are feeling as that emotional connection that you need, and being able to find the right thing, the right tool, the right way to handle those emotions, and being able to deal with those kind of things, right? And then being able to pay attention. Is this something physiological that your body is trying to tell you, that maybe you do need calcium, maybe you do need potassium, maybe you, like, if you're craving potatoes, right, or bananas or something like that, it's like, well, what are those foods high in? What kind of nutrients are they high in? And what do you get out of those? And then finding, is that the best way to provide your body with what it is that it needs? So um, this is why I think it's really important to pay attention to those emotions, pay attention to um, the sensations that are going on in your body. And that is one of the ways that you heal from some of the trauma that you've been through, because it's so easy for us to go into a dissociative state, which means not being in touch with the emotions that we feel, not being grounded in our body, and being able to do this kind of work is part of the healing process. And then that's where we also have to start to learn things, like being aware of our feelings and then how to process those, because sometimes when we first start feeling these feelings and they start coming up for us, they become really, really overwhelming. It's kind of like, if you imagine somebody who is deaf, and they finally get like one of those cochlear implants where they can start to hear. Imagine if that all of a sudden gets turned on and it's at full blast. That's going to be extremely painful for them to start feeling all of these sensations and hearing things that they had never heard before. And how does their brain process all of this new information in this new way that they had never experienced before? And it's the same kind of thing as we start to do this inner work and be much more in touch with our body, be in touch with what's going on for us, learning what is pleasurable for us and what is not pleasurable for us, learning to identify those feelings in our body. It's like, of like when I would feel anxious and I used to get a whole lot of heartburn. I like almost never have heartburn anymore. But I used to have heartburn all the time. And I would have this acid reflux, and I was always taking Tums and all kinds of different things. And it was always very, very painful. And most of that was emotional rather than physical problems. And when I dealt with the emotional side of things, those physical ailments that were correlated with it went away. So this is why it's so important to take the time to start doing this inner work and really being in touch with our bodies, understanding our emotions, thinking about how these certain patterns play out for us. And my patterns can be different from your patterns. It's important for you to understand what actually works for you, what you are feeling, what sensations you're going through, and figuring out what things are pleasurable for you and what things are not pleasurable, removing the things that are adding stress to your life and giving you unpleasant experiences and bringing in more of those pleasurable ones. Now, keep in mind, this doing this will, like, some people might be afraid. It's like, well, if I do that, it's like, well, Tina, one thing that was really pleasurable is when I did XYZ drug, right? Whatever it was that they did. And it's like, well, I don't want to do drugs, but I found that really, really pleasurable. And I'm like, there's a difference, okay? There is a difference between the pleasure, or was it a distraction from the pain that you felt? There's a big difference, right? Because if you could find that same feeling and that same reward that you got from the drugs in a different way that wasn't as harmful, and it was able to give you the same emotional release that you were getting from the drugs, I promise you, you would go for that different way. So it's a matter of paying attention to, okay, when you were in those experiences, what did you get out of those things? And then start to really pay attention to the feelings in your body, the feelings around your emotions. Did it turn off the noise, right? Did it make you feel calmer? So finding new ways to make you feel calmer. So for example, one of the things that I do when I'm feeling pretty anxious or stressed is I go to YouTube and I Google search like rain or thunderstorm kind of sounds, and I just put both earbuds in, I turn that up full blast, and it drowns out. It's like it short circuits my brain that I can't do that anxious overthinking. It's like it literally washes away all of those anxious thoughts, and it just allows me to calm down. I also incorporate this with breathing as well to make sure that I stay calm in this process. So those are things that I will do as ways to calm that anxiety, as opposed to um, being reactive, emotionally reactive, saying things that I don't mean. I will do things like journaling to get in touch with some of those emotions as well. Especially if I'm feeling emotions that feel more powerful. Um, so things like anger. So if I'm feeling angry about something, it's easier to stay in that. You feel powerful in that state of anger, right? But what's really behind it, anger, is it's actually fear. So when you actually take the time to do journaling and you write down all of those things, those anger, resentment, the more no holds barred you can be about it, the better it is, because then you can start to dig down to the root of what's going on internally for you. And when we look at this through the lens of ourselves and what we're experiencing, and paying attention to the feelings in our body, right? You know, how do your shoulders feel? How do your hands feel? How does your head, your eyes, your jaw, like, you know, paying attention to every part of your body, what's going on with it, and really be able to give yourself those things that you need to get yourself to a calmer state, to a less anxious state, a more pleasurable, happy state, right? And the more you pay attention to your own self and stay present with yourself, then the better you're going to be able to mitigate any of these emotional challenges that you may have. You catch early warning signs. You will also prevent illnesses a lot in your body as well, because you'll start to be aware of things of like, am I really hungry or am I thirsty? And it's like, oh, okay, I'm actually thirsty. Like every time I crave chocolate, it's like, you know what? I'm actually probably thirsty because every time I have chocolate, I drink a bunch of water afterwards. So let me try just drinking a bunch of water first, right? Oh, okay, that actually worked, right? Sometimes you may find that, hey, you're eating more or you're craving certain things that you know are not good for you, um, because you actually need sleep. But that was your go-to when you were pushing yourself all the time to just try and get through things. So it's really interesting when you start to pay attention to your own physiological patterns, the sensations, the emotions that are going on in your body, and paying attention to what's happening with you. Um, and sometimes when you're first doing this, when you're really dissociated, you may have to go back over the past couple of days. What's been going on the past couple of days for me? Oh, okay. Because we're so disconnected, maybe there's an emotion that we felt anxious, we shut it down right away, disassociated from it, went into our automatic coping mechanisms, deflect, not paying attention, deny those feelings because they're too hard for us to process. But then after a couple of days go by, we have a meltdown over something that seems completely irrelevant, and that could be a meltdown, either crying or burst of anger or whatever it is that you're feeling, and it may be from something that's been built up for a couple of days that you're really not paying attention to. And it's usually one thing happens here, one thing happens there, then another thing happens to reaffirm that thing, then another thing happens, and then all of these drops in the bucket start to build up, and then it has a tipping point where it starts to overflow on us, and then we have this um, disproportionate reaction to the circumstance that we're going through. And I used to say, you know what, I could go through really, really tough, traumatizing experiences, doesn't phase me. I have no, like, I am calm, cool, collected, everything's cool. Few days later, I can't find a pencil and I'm having a meltdown that my life is over and I'm a loser and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just a delayed reaction from something else that I was going through, that I hadn't, it wasn't safe enough to feel those feelings in the moment, or it maybe it was, but because it's such an automatic reaction from my childhood, that it's a delayed response. So when we start to pay attention to our bodies, to our emotions, to the things that we're feeling, and we give ourselves time to reflect and think about how we felt and what's been going on with us, um, it better enables us to be able to detect these patterns and to start putting um, more appropriate tools and processes in place that are much more effective and less harmful for us. So those are things that I do on a regular basis, and it's a matter of focusing on bringing those much more pleasurable and enjoyable experiences into our life on a daily basis, in whatever form that may be, but just finding it in the small, little, mundane things. So, like today, one of the things that I had, my cats, they had been outside, it was a little bit cold, they got left out there a little bit longer, and then when they came in, they really wanted to snuggle, they wanted to steal my warm. And so my one cat, Stumpy, she was all snuggled up on me, and I just took a little bit of time just to stay extra present. And I focused on the texture of her fur. I focused on, you know, petting her, the energy that I felt from her. I could feel the vibration of her purr on me and the warmth of her body on mine, and all of those kind of things, just really getting granular about the feelings and the sensations that you're feeling, and bringing that into creating a much more present, in-depth, tangible, tactical, sensual experience, right? And sensual doesn't mean sexual. It just means that you're fully present, fully alive in the moment. You're feeling it with every fiber of your being, right? That is when you start incorporating that in even the most mundane activities. It can be brushing your teeth, okay? And just feeling the pleasure and the gratitude of that. And doing that on a more consistent basis will help you feel much more grounded, much calmer, much happier. So I'd love to hear if you guys implement these tools, these golden nuggets, and how did you find them? What did you try? I'd love to know what it was that you tried. And, you know, how would you describe the experience? Just like in the movie City of Angels with Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage, where they're talking about the describe how a pear tastes, right? The juiciness of it, the thickness of the skin, how it's got that little bit of a rubbery feel, and then how the flesh of the pear is like a granular texture, but it's also very juicy. Unless it's not quite ripe, then it's a little bit more crunchy, right? Um, and then, just thinking of like, just even the juice of it, you know, dripping down your throat or like on your lips, all of those kind of things, just really being fully present in the physical experience and treating it like it's a brand new experience, right? Imagine what this would be like. Like what would you think of this if this was your very first time being brushing your teeth with an electric toothbrush? How would that feel? Like, imagine you're from a different planet that had never had that kind of experience before, and you're like, what is this thing, right? And just kind of, it's like looking at it through the eyes of a child. It's like being like a child, right? And this is your very first exciting experience. And just kind of being present with all of those sensations. It's like, okay, an electric toothbrush, the whir of the toothbrush and the vibration of the the unit that you're using, and then the toothpaste, what kind of flavor is it? Is it, do you have the bubblegum kids flavor, or do you have like a cinnamon? Do you have a peppermint or a mint? What is it, right? What do you use? And then how does it feel on your teeth? Do you brush your tongue? Do you like, all of those kind of things? What's the motion that you use when you're brushing your teeth, right? Just really paying attention and looking at any experience that you're doing as if it was the very first time that you were doing that, and bringing the excitement of it um, into it. It reminds me of this time that when I was a kid, they did this. They read like a Halloween ghost story kind of thing, and they brought in like a tactile experience that the kids had to have their eyes closed, and in one part they were talking about veins and like stuff like that, and then they had us stick our hands in bowls of like cooked noodles, like spaghetti noodles, and where it's like it just brought this whole level of sensation. It was like, oh, and eyeballs, and they had like peeled grapes, and it was like, like, and the kids were all freaking out and everything like that, of just having this tactile sensation added to this descriptive narrative of their of this story experience, right? And just kind of bringing that into your world of how can you, um, even if you are eating something or doing something, and so that's a physical movement that you just kind of go through the motions of. If you slow down and it's like, okay, how would I describe this experience? How would I describe this taste or this color to somebody who can't see, can't taste, or isn't around and has never experienced this? How would I describe this? And take the time to actually write it out. You know, how would you describe what feeling angry feels like? How would you describe what does feeling sad? Tapioca pudding, fish eyes and glue. Yum. Yeah. I was not a fan of tapioca pudding, no. But yeah, so like think of those kind of things. It's like how can you make your mundane experiences into an out of world experience, a brand new, refreshing experience. And that could be everything that you like to do, something that you've done a million times over, right? How would you describe those things? What would you do different? What would you do to make it more enjoyable? If you were introducing somebody else to this thing, what would you explain to them that you would find beneficial? And I've done this even with when I've had to do like mundane data entry jobs. Ugh, like they can be so tedious, and you can allow it to be draining, or you can flip it to, you know what, I love doing this because I can do this without thinking, and it gives my mind, my imagination, the ability to drift off and to think of something else cool while I just go through the motions of this kind of thing, right? And that's if you're doing, say, like a repetitive task. You could also equally make it much more torturous by focusing on, how long it's taking and how many more you have to go, and that it just like seems like such an upward battle. And when you start to do that in a day-to-day mundane activity, that you can shift the experience of what it is that you have by just your thought process and how you would describe that experience. It changes a lot of things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So if you could describe what is right about a situation, even when you're going through a hellish time, that will shift your perspective. Just as equally, if you're going through something that's not so bad, but you start nitpicking everything about it, you criticize everything about it, well, now you're creating a version of hell, right? You're creating something that is not enjoyable, that is painful, and you're focusing on all of those things rather than focusing on what is right about the situation. So, those are different things that you can do, and no different than, when you first start a job, you're so excited. Hey, you're going to get this great paycheck. You're going to have all this steady income coming in. You're going to be able to meet new people. You're going to feel like you have purpose, you have drive, you have all of this kind of stuff. And then after the pink cloud kind of wears off, and it's like, I got these customers that are bitching at me. My coworker won't shut the fuck up. I can't do all the stuff I need to do. My boss is on my ass all the time. Like, you just focus on all the negative stuff, and now your day to day is miserable. Not because anything changed from day one, but because of how we look at it, how we're framing it, how we're describing our experience. How we describe our experience is very, very powerful, right? And this isn't to say don't feel your feelings. If you're feeling those ways, if you're feeling those, I don't even want to say negative. If you're feeling angry, you're feeling sad, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling hopeless, any of those kind of things, feel those feelings. And then like write those down, understand where they're coming from, and then also look for ways that you can start to bring in, how can I look at this different? How can I make this more pleasurable? So when I had to do repetitive tasks, um, I I played these little games with myself of timing myself. Can I do it faster this next time? Okay, okay, what worked to allow me to do it faster? Okay, I can do this, and when I did it this way, I got a faster result. Oh no, that way was actually slower. So I would play these little games with myself. I would um, play these games. Like, I used to have to create these documents every night in shipping and receiving for the drivers, paperwork, and they were stacks of bills of lading, and I had to like pull apart these sheets because there were like 4 or 5 different sheets. And there were copies of it, and then of course we had to keep copies. The drivers needed copies, so I had to pull them apart and then separate them, and then I had to put some in the document control, some in the warehouse paperwork, some in the driver's paperwork. And so I would test myself on speed, how well I could do that. And the guys would sit there and they'd watch me because I'd be like flying through these papers like crazy, and they'd be like, how the hell do you do that so fast? I'm like, what? And it was just because I would time myself and I would play this game with myself. And then the foreman would come in and he'd like, oh, where's the Kingston paperwork? And I'd be like, because I created this systematic process that I had a repeatable thing that I'd be like, yeah, it's the third one down on the left. And he'd be like, how do you know that? Like, because I'm like, no, I put them in the same order every time, so I would save time with not having to think about where they were because I knew where they were because of the repeatable process that I created. And that was just something that I did as a game to screw around, and it allowed myself to um, focus on things that were more pleasurable. Like I would focus on the radio, I'd focus on other things, and daydreaming and all those kind of things because I created a system that I didn't have to think about. So those are just different tips, different tools that I've used to be much more in touch with my emotions. And these are things that you can do to help with that healing inner work, right? To become less dissociated, less likely to look for ways to avoid your emotions. So, because they can be anything from disassociation to addictions, any of those kind of things. When you learn how to be aware of your emotions and be aware of your body and deal with those in when they're small issues, then they're less likely to get out of control, overwhelming that you can't deal with them, right? And which causes the need for the disassociation or the addiction because those emotions are now too overwhelming. But if you start to pay attention to them in the small ways, you can deal with them while they're still small, not overwhelming. It's much more manageable. And this is what the healing work is all about. And the more you do this, the faster you become at it, the more automatic it becomes. So at first, it's going to be challenging, but it is worth working through that process and understanding your patterns and understanding yourself and your body and how you react to certain things. So, wow, an hour and 11 minutes. Not too bad. That was a pretty long live today. So, hopefully that was helpful to you guys. If you kind of came in a bit late, I will be posting the replay on my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. All of the replays are uploaded there. You'll also see the artwork and links to it that is available there. So if there's any of the artwork that you like, um, go ahead and check that out. Let's see, that one, got some up there. There we go, we got some of those ones there. So check those out, guys, and I'll be back on again tomorrow. So I hope you have a great night, and we will talk to you again later. Bye.